welcome to MOOC. Today in this episode, we will deal with state power and sovereignty. The concept of state is of great antiquity. In India, we can have its resemblance during the age of Ramayana and Mahabharata, and in West during the age of Greek and Roman civilization. In India, it was known as Rajya or Samrajya, and the Greek called is polis, and in the Roman civilization it was known as civitas. The term state has been coined by the philosopher Machiavelli, and after the Peace of Westphalia it has been become a worldwide phenomenon. We can have many definitions of the state because as each and every concept in political science, there is no unanimity among the scholars regarding the definition of state. First, we will deal with the definition of state as given by Greek political philosopher Aristotle. To Aristotle, the state is a union of families and villages having for its end a perfect and self-sufficient life, by which we mean a happy and honorable life. According to the Roman political thinker Cicero, a numerous society united by a common sense of right and a mutual participation is called a state. French political thinker Jean Bodin is of the opinion that an association of families and their common possessions governed by the supreme power and by reason is regarded as a state. And according to the Marxist political thinker, the state is the instrument for maintenance of rule of one class over the other classes. And coming to the most accepted definition, to Garner, the state as a concept of political science and public law is a community of persons more or less numerous, permanently occupying a definite portion of territory, independent or nearly so, of external control, having an organized government to which the great body of inhabitants rendered their habitual obedience. After analyzing this definition, we can have four features of a state: population, territory, government, and sovereignty. So far as the territory is concerned, a definite and more or less permanent portion of territory is considered as an essential feature of state. Land, water, airspace constitute the territory of a state. However, no specific size of territory cannot be laid down, since the state is the community of persons. Population is the primary element of a state. Like territory, there is no specific size of population also. To Plato and Aristotle, the ancient Greek political thinkers, the state should be with less population. But in modern times, we have states with large populations like India and China, and with small populations like that is in San Marino, Monaco, which is less than thousands. A large population can be an asset for a well-developed state and can also be a liability for an underdeveloped or developing state. Government is the concrete and visible instrument of state power. Government can be of different kinds, different forms in different countries like dictatorship, monarchy, democracy. In modern times, in most of the states, including our India, we have democracy. And the most important element of the state is sovereignty. Sovereignty means supreme power. The concept of sovereignty has two aspects, internal and external. Internally viewed, the state has supreme power over the individuals and the associations within the territory of the state. And externally viewed, the state is free from any control of any external power. And coming to the theories regarding the origin of the state, we can have many more theories. Theories of divine origin, force theory, patriarchal theory, matriarchal theory, social contract theory, evolutionary theory, and the Marxist theory. Theories other than the theories of social contract theory and evolutionary theory cannot be widely accepted by the scholars in political science. Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau are the exponent of social contract theory. To them, the state and the sovereign has been emerged to a social contract. To Hobbes and Rousseau, there was only one contract that was done among the individual, and through this contract, the state and sovereign has been emerged. But to Locke, there were two contracts. One was done among the individuals and the other was between the individual and the state, that is the sovereign. According to the evolutionary theory of state, the state is the product of historical growth. To the evolutionary theorist, kinship, religion, conflict, war, political consciousness, economic activity, all these are factors that has been contributed to the emergence of a state. Besides these liberal theories, we have the Marxist theory. To the Marxist, the state is not at all a natural institution. To them, in a class-divided society, the state has been emerged as a result of the irreconcilable antagonism among the classes. And the state will wither away in a classless society. However, the critical rationalist like Karl Popper has been criticized Marxism as dogmatic and hence unscientific. Again, there is no unanimity regarding the nature of the state also among the scholars in political science. Regarding the nature of the state, we can have idealist theory, utilitarian theory, individualistic theory, Marxist theory. The idealist theorists like Hegel, Kant, Fichte, Bradley, Bosanquet, Green, they are of the opinion that the state is the self-sufficient and self-actualizing institution. To them, state is the march of God on earth. And to the utilitarians, the state is the necessary evil. On the other hand, the individualist thinkers only allow the state to enjoy some minimum role. To them, that government is the best which governs the least. And the Marxist thinkers, they are of the opinion that the state is nothing but an instrument of coercion of one class by another in a class-divided society. And also, we have the concept of welfare state. After the Second World War, the concept of welfare state has been emerged by J.M. Keynes to combat socialism. The Exponent of this welfare state advocate for the state administered development. This concept has been flourished throughout the Cold War period. And after the disintegration of the USSR, we can have the neoliberal theorist. These neoliberal thinkers bring the idea of minimal state, limited state, etc. And nowadays, we are witnessing the mixed state also. In some states like India, we can have the concept of disinvestment, privatization, and at the same time, some social security measures are also going on. And coming to the evolution of the statehood. Coming to the point of the evolution of statehood, we can have three stages: early stage, developed stage, and mature stage. Early states were always incomplete states both organizationally and socially. Professional administrative apparatus, a system of regular taxation, administrative territorial division, written law, sufficient centralization, etc. were absent in early states. Greek polis, Roman civitas were the example of early states. The developed states were fully formed centralized states that can be seen in late antiquity, Middle Ages, and during the early modern period. The professional apparatus of administration, control and suppression, a system of regular taxation, and administrative territorial division all are present in this type of states. The mature states are states of industrial epoch. It is the result of modernization, capitalism, and industrial revolution. And consequently, it has a qualitatively different production system, production basis, and social structure. The state apparatus and army become autonomous in this state, at least to some extent. However, with the advent of globalization, the centralized state system has been withering away day by day. And at the same time, the state administered development programs are also taking place in some states. States, irrespective of its nature and the stage of development, centers around the concept of power. And what is power? Power is the ability of one to compel others to do something against their own will. And we can have Marxist, pluralist, and elitist explanation of the nature of power. To the Marxist thinkers, the source of power in a society lies in the economic infrastructure. In a class-divided society, the owners of the means of production constitute the ruling class and dominate the society. Philosophers like Pareto, Mosaka, Mises reject the Marxist theory regarding the nature of power. They argue that all societies are divided into two groups. One is ruling minority group and the other is ruled. And the smaller group always enjoys the benefits that power brings. This theory is called the elitist theory regarding the nature of power. The pluralist theories rejects both these two explanations as given by Marxist theories and the elitist theories. The pluralists argue that the power in a modern industrial society is dispersed among a variety of groups and decisions are results from continual competition and bargaining between the organized groups. The state, just as an honest broker, mediates and compromises between the demands of various organized groups in a state. And this power is exercised in a state by the sovereign authority. So, sovereignty, as we have mentioned before also, is the primary element of a state, because without sovereignty, a body of persons having some definite portion of territory, having an organized government, cannot be regarded as state. This term sovereignty has been derived from a Latin word superenes, that means supreme. It is essentially a juristic concept. And Jean Bodin is regarded as the father of modern theory of sovereignty. To Bodin, sovereignty is the supreme power of the state over citizen and subject unrestrained by law. And regarding sovereignty also, there is no unanimity among the scholars regarding the definition of the sovereignty. We are not going to the to other definitions, just directly coming to the definition of John Austin. This is the most accepted definition of sovereignty. To Austin, if a determinate human superior, not in the habit of obedience to a like superior, receives the habitual obedience from the bulk of a given society, that determinate superior in that society is sovereign, and that society, including that superior, is society political and independent. After analyzing this definition, we can have 5 elements: absoluteness, universality, indivisibility, inalienability, and permanence. Sovereignty is universal in the sense that it is comprehensive and extend to the individuals and associations within the territorial limit of a state. Sovereignty is inalienable in the sense that no state can give up its sovereignty and yet remain a state. The changes of government do not affect the continuity and permanence of the sovereignty. So, in that sense, sovereignty is permanent. The sovereignty of a state is absolute and legally unlimited in the sense that there can be no legal power within the state superior to it. And sovereignty of a state is exclusive. Sovereignty itself remains undivided. And all these concepts constitute the monistic view of sovereignty. As against this monistic view of sovereignty, we can have the pluralist view. Crabbe, Duguay, Lasky are the pluralist thinkers. To the pluralist thinkers, sovereignty is very much divisible and is not the monopoly of the state. Coming to the typology of sovereignty, we can have legal sovereignty, political sovereignty, de jure sovereignty, de facto sovereignty, external sovereignty, and internal sovereignty. Legal sovereignty. Legal sovereignty is the authority of state which has the legal power to issue final commands. So, it is the authority to enact the law. And contrary to this legal sovereignty, Dicey is of the opinion that behind this sovereign which the lawyers recognizes, there is another sovereign to whom the legal sovereign must bow. And such sovereign to whom the legal sovereign has to bow is the political sovereign. In every order state, the legal sovereign must pay due attention to the political sovereign. Coming to the example of India, we can say that the constitution is the legal sovereign, and the government is the instrument to carry out this sovereignty, and the common people constitute the common people can be regarded as the political sovereign. De jure sovereignty is that which law recognizes. That means the de jure sovereignty has the authority. And when a person or body of persons displace the de jure sovereign, then that person or body of person can become the de facto sovereign. And we should mention that in due course of time, if the de facto sovereign continues to be in power, it becomes the de jure sovereign. Coming to the point of internal and external sovereign. Internally viewed, the state has the supreme power over its citizen, over all other associations within the territory of the state. So, the state is internally sovereign, and if the state remains out of the control of any foreign power, we can say that the state is externally sovereign. And coming to the conclusion. To conclude, we must say that nowadays the Westphalian system of sovereignty is under unprecedented assault. Raymond Werner, the liberal thinker, neoliberal thinker, propagates the concept of sovereignty at bay. That means the state is not at all a sovereign today. Sovereignty is in the bay. The neoliberals are of the opinion that with the advent of globalization, the nation states are ceased to be sovereign. Globalization and the domination of capitalism has been justified by Francis Fukuyama as the state of end of history, and Samuel Huntington's view of triumph of capitalism, capitalist civilization have made state interdependent or virtually dependent over the developed capitalist that has led to the limit over the state sovereignty. After analyzing this definition, we can have 5 elements of sovereignty: absoluteness, universality, inalienability, indivisibility, and permanence. Absoluteness. The sovereignty of state is absolute and legally unlimited. There can be no legal power within the state superior to the sovereign. However, it can be limited by some self-imposed limitations like moral values, international laws, etc. Universality. Sovereignty is all-comprehensive and extend to all individuals and associations within the particular territorial limit of the state. The changes in government do not affect the continuity and permanence of the sovereignty, and in that sense, sovereignty is permanent also. Inalienability. Sovereignty cannot be alienated from the state. No state can give up its sovereignty and yet remain a state. Indivisibility. Sovereignty cannot be divisible. The state alone possesses supreme power and legally competent to compel the obedience of the residents. Among these different types of sovereignty, the concept of legal sovereignty receives worldwide acceptance from the scholars. The concept of sovereignty is basically a legal concept basically a juristic concept. The term has been coined by a jurist and also elaborated mostly by a jurist. So, the concept is essentially juristic in nature. And this Austin theory of sovereignty is considered as the monastic or legal theory of sovereignty. Legal sovereignty implies a theory of sovereignty in terms of formal law. In every state, there is a determinate person or body of persons which possesses supreme authority to issue the highest command, to enact the final law. That person or body of persons is designated as legal sovereign. The world sovereignty that has been emerged after the Peace of Westphalia rests on absolute sovereignty, and David Hale has termed it as classical regime of sovereignty. This classical regime of sovereignty has four corollaries to corollaries. The first one is the crystallization of international law. The international laws conferred on the heads of the state or on the heads of the government the capacity to enter into the treaties or agreements with the representatives of other states. Second, international law was indifferent to the form of national political organization. It accepted a de facto approach to the statehood and to the government. The third corollary. It involved the creation of a disjuncture between the organizing principles of national and international affairs. In theory and practice, the political and ethical rules governing to those spheres diverged. Since the liberal democratic states entrenched in the West, the trend to be democratic in the internal affairs of the state and at the same time maintaining undemocratic relations among the states, a trend to entrench to the accountability and democratic legitimacy inside the state boundaries and pursued regions of the state outside such boundaries, and democratic citizenship right, democratic right for the insiders, and frequent negation of those rights for the outsiders has been emerged. And the fourth corollary is the delegitimation of all the non-state actors within the state. Now, absolute sovereignty versus relative sovereignty. During the 18th century, a new concept of relative sovereignty as against the absolute sovereignty that has been emerged after the Peace of Westphalia, that is termed by David Hale as classical regime of sovereignty. The concept of relative sovereignty had been emerged with those of the head of the states who had to be dependent, at least to some extent, in the different aspects of internal as well as external or foreign aspects. This distinction between the absolute and relative sovereignty recognized the divisibility of sovereignty. And again, by the 1990s, as the European Union expanded, as the intervention in Bosnia, Rwanda, Haiti, Iraq and Somalia on international sanction, some scholars began to doubt on the sanctity of the sovereignty. That means the sanctity of the sovereignty as explained by Austin, explained by Boda, that is the monistic concept of sovereignty, that is the legal concept of sovereignty. And during this time, the neoliberal thinkers has been coined some terms, like Raymond Werner coined the term sovereignty at bay. Francis Fukuyama advocates the concept of end of history. So they are in favor of the diminishing the sanctity of the sovereignty. The scholars like Krasner and Fowler believe that the state sovereignty has been revisable and revised, violable and violated continuously and constantly. The state, according to the liberal thinkers, compromises its sovereignty through several ways. First of all, the rulers can enter contract voluntarily. Secondly, the rulers may enter conventions or agreements that do not depend on mutual compliance. However, from these agreements or treaties, both of the power gain something, and these two constitute the organized hypocrisy. That means apparently they are showing that they are sovereign, but it is hypocrisy in a sense. Actually, they are waving their sovereignty away. And thirdly, the state can face coercion and interferences with their sovereignty against their will. So it is a clear imposition. And fourth, the state can compromise other states' sovereignty through imposition. It is also a clear imposition. So through these four ways, the state can compromise with its sovereignty. And if we come to the Indian perspective, we may start with Manu. However, in Manu's time also, naturally, the concept of modern state was not there. The term state was not there. It was kingdom. So, to Manu, the king should always be ready with his armed force to combat his enemy. And the king have to control his subjects by exercising force. And the surprising thing is that Manu did not stop here. He again was of the opinion that the king used to use force to control their subject with affection too. So Manu's king enjoy legal and also the political sovereignty. Another ancient political thinker, Kautilya. Kautilya, when advocated the Saptanga theory of state, he advocated the supreme and highest power of the king or Swami. This king or Swami also represented both de jure and de facto sovereignty. He, that means the king, according to Kautilya, is the symbol of legal and political authority and also the power. There is the difference between authority and power. Power is the ability to compel others to do something against their own will, and when the power has legal sanction behind it, it becomes the authority. The king is regarded as the savior as well as the protector of the individuals within the state, that means the kingdom at that time. The king, as Kautilya believed, should not rule his subjects only by exercising his power, but again also with full affection for the subjects. Then we should mention Sri Aurobindo, another Indian philosopher. Sri Aurobindo has coined a new term totally unknown to us. Before Sri Aurobindo, the term is nation soul. Aurobindo was of the opinion that the nation, according to the as the individual has some souls, the nation also has a soul. And the individual render their obedience to the nation soul not because of the fear of force or any coercion, but because it is the reflection of their own soul.